For Creamer Media's Polity, I'm Shannon Derehove. I'm speaking to Harper Reed, an American computer programmer and the man behind President Barack Obama's 2012 online election campaign. What primarily inspired your interest in technology and startups?
I don't know if there was one thing that primarily inspired me. I think that startups, or it seems that startups are often the pure essence of technology. They often are the ones that are able to push the envelope a little bit more, and they're often where kind of innovation surfaces. And I don't think it surfaces there because startups are necessarily innovative. I think it's kind of like just a bacteria. It just grows. Innovation just grows there, and it's kind of like leaving a plate of raw meat out. Like eventually it's gonna get rotten, but instead of rotten, it's innovation. Like you have all these people together and they're trying to solve a problem by any means necessary, and so it just happens that because they don't have any rules, they don't have any bureaucracy, they don't have any they don't have anyone to tell them that it's not how it's supposed to go. And one of my favorite examples of this is just how many startups out there don't know that what they are attempting, they shouldn't be attempting what they're attempting. And so you have companies who are making huge leaps within their specific industries because no one told them that they couldn't. And I like that a lot. And it's also probably one of the quickest ways to achieve wealth. And there's a lot of ways to do it, but it's a lottery, and you just have to keep playing.
Tell us more about Project Narwhal. What processes did you go through as Chief Technology Officer to make Barack Obama's 2012 re-election campaign a success? And what was the most difficult aspect of these processes?
Project Narwhal it's just a database that hooked all of our applications together, kind of allowed things to just one application to talk to another application. The best example of this was it allowed our apps, like just you to log into one app and be logged into the other applications. Because our users, we have so many users and they had so many usernames, we just wanted to make it very easy for them. And this is all about how do we make it easier? That's the game. And that's honestly one of the biggest things we tried to do with the campaign or software was, how do we make the experience easier? How do we make their time more efficient? Their use of their time more efficient? And generally, how do we just kind of make it better? And so when as the Chief Technology Officer for the Obama for America campaign, my role was ultimately to find and hire and get all of the people together to solve those problems. So we had a set list of problems that probably initiated from a wish list in 2008, from 2008 to 2011, and then the things we developed that we kind of thought of. All those things scrambled together was kind of what we were supposed to do, and then we just had to kind of find the people to do those.
How do you think your involvement in Barack Obama's presidential campaign helped change the way people perceive social media and their engagement with politics?
My involvement in the campaign, I think, has created a very interesting media narrative coming out of the campaign, and I think it's largely wrong, actually. So coming out of the campaign, we won, which is really good. And we won because we had this amazing volunteer base. We had amazing people who support the president, and we had an amazing candidate, obviously the president. And all those things together is why we won. And we had good technology to kind of wrap those things together, like to kind of keep them close. But all it did was it was a small force multiplier, technology was. So we just made it so a volunteer, if they volunteered for 60 hours, maybe it was worth 80 hours. That's what our goal was, and that's largely what we did. But at the end of the campaign on election day, when the Republicans their media narrative kind of fell down, and they started talking about how their tech had failed and all this stuff, coming out of election day, there was this huge kind of want to talk about technology, which I think was a little bit false. Like, we should have been talking about the volunteers, the people who gave all the money, all these kind of people who really helped. And instead we talked about, technology. And I think it's just because no one had talked about technology in campaigns before. It was great for me and my ego, but I don't think it necessarily was the right narrative.
Why do you think crowdsourcing is such an influential and powerful approach for creative projects, business, as well as society in general to find solutions to problems?
Crowdsourcing is a really important innovation. I would say it's probably one of the most important innovations on the internet in the last 15 years. And I say that because the internet, if you look at the internet, and I'm sure, I'd be fascinated to know more about this here in South Africa, but if you look at the internet in the US, the internet is a point of which it democratizes access to all sorts of things. Information, products, everything. It just gives you access. And so when you're able to say to a population, here everyone has the same access to this information, then everyone there can start doing things with that information, and they can start achieving various things. They can start learning things, all this stuff. And crowdsourcing kind of takes that and allows that same group of people to have access to create things. And so if we were to say to a huge population here, we're trying to create for us it was t-shirts at Threadless. We're trying to create a t-shirt. Let's all work together to create this. I think that's a pretty interesting thing, and it worked really very well for us. And if you look at the campaign, a lot of what campaigns in the US are built upon is this idea of how do we work together to achieve something. And so sourcing usually is with product development when we talk about it. But how it has evolved was it moved from not just product development but to content development, to just communication, etc. And so you have things like YouTube largely is a crowdsourced, media thing. I say thing because you can't say it's a channel. There's so much weird stuff. You get stuck in these little kind of paths, but it's you never know where it's coming from, and you can reach all sorts of cultures all over the world just through YouTube because everyone's uploading these videos, and it's that's really exciting. So how do you just kind of take this and apply it to things that are important? And what is important, right? Nobody knows what important really means in this context, but for the campaign it was, how do we apply it to getting our voters to talk about things? How do we apply it by getting people to tweet about various things? And if you think of when you talk about product development, you would normally hire a bunch of people to do that work. And so instead what you've done is you've taken the group, the crowd, and focused them on that work. And so for social, for example, instead of saying we're going to hire 1,000 people to manage social media, we empower our users to do that job for us. So we source that out to our crowd. And this is huge, and I think that it just is a mirror of the democratization of access that the internet has created.
You have often noted that it is hard to get women and minorities into engineering. Why do you think it's important that these groups become more involved in these fields, and how do you think it can be done?
Why it is important to have diverse teams and diversity within your product development or your engineering firms is actually, you can actually look at it by saying, who are our customers? I look outside, here in Johannesburg, and it's a very diverse group of people, outside of this room. And I'm guessing that this is also who is using the internet here. And so if your teams don't reflect this, then how are we making products for them? And so a lot of this is about how do you make products for the internet? And when you're thinking about making products for the internet, I always think of a blog, has comments, and my mom can comment on it. Some kid from South Africa can comment on the same blog. And then some kid in the Middle East, and some kid in Europe, and some woman in Russia, all these people can comment on the same blog. And then you're just okay, how are we creating a team that is just white men? Why are we doing that? To facilitate this thing, it has to be, the teams have to, because they have to understand how people are using it. And the quickest way to understand that is to bring as many different opinions and ideas and cultures and the historical context that each of us hold, all that stuff into one place, so that when we're doing that product development, we can just do it purely and immediately, rather than having to really investigate and look out into it. And I think you still have to reach outside where you're comfortable, but I do think you can get pretty far by just inviting those people into your team. Now, it is important to make sure that everyone is on your team is the best. And so right now, especially in the US, and I can't speak to how it is here, but it's very hard to find engineers that are not well, I always like to say that are non-Asian minorities, because it's pretty easy to find Asian minorities and whatnot, and for engineers. And so since it's hard to find that, there's a couple questions like how do we get more? How do we train more? How do we make our teams better? How do we make our work environments more accessible? You have to be deliberate. And so that's the trick, is making sure that you are making an effort to solve these problems, I think is the first step. And then the second step is then being able to have a dialogue about it. And I think that it's sometimes tricky. And it's sometimes people, especially in the US, people don't like to talk about these things. And so they find that it's sometimes easier to ignore it. But it won't get better.
What do you think the current shutdown of the US government will mean for America?
The shutdown is kind of frustrating. I've actually, I think, been in a plane the entire time the shutdown is happening. So I haven't been able to follow it too directly. All I do know is that it's very frustrating to watch it happen, because all of the people, all of these workers who've committed to helping, government workers and whatnot, are now kind of without work. And so it's, anyone that is deemed non-essential, which is a lot. And they still have their jobs, of course, but they don't get paid. And so seeing kind of these, just normal Americans being punished for what it seems largely to be a very stupid argument. The thing that's frustrating is it's all about healthcare, right? In the U.S., it's so fascinating that you have these kind of groups of people who often are, they're all very old, very conservative, and they are, they're trying to make the country better, but it just so happens that their better isn't where the country seems to want to go. And so the country, obviously elected the president twice with a promise of universal health care. The Congress passed it, both in the House and the Senate. The Supreme Court upheld it. Every single path that could be taken to ensure that this was the right path was taken. So they followed all of the rules of our government. And because the Republicans don't agree, they have, kind of held the government hostage. And it's disappointing, because it seems like a very small, loud minority is ruining it for the majority. And it's frustrating. And I think that in a lot of ways, with right now, in the US, we're seeing democracy play itself out. We're very lucky to have a very free and open country in the US. And, we have the NSA stuff that's going on. We have the shutdown. All of these things are real-time democracy. We get to see something come out. We get to see the people react. We get to see the legislation then react to that. We get to see how the government will fail, how it will succeed, and that's fascinating. It's just a bummer. It's not like in a simulation on a computer or something. We have to actually deal with it, and I wish it would be over so that my friends in the federal government could get paid again.
That was social media pioneer Harper Reed discussing the future of big data.